That's Han van Meegeren, the Dutch painter, and this is his trial. He was facing the death penalty. All he had ever wanted to do was become a great painter, like his idol, Johannes Vermeer. He wanted to be great, but he was only kinda okay. But being kinda okay didn't stop old Han from becoming one of the greatest art forgers in history, selling millions of dollars worth of paintings, and even fooling the Nazis. This is his story. Han van Meegeren had some success in the Netherlands. He made some money painting portraits on commission. He painted this deer. It's kinda nice. But the critics and collectors thought he was a little bit of a copycat. They thought his work wasn't inspired, that it didn't have the life of those old masters he loved so much. But Han thought,
"Luck be a lady tonight."
I'm gonna get the last laugh. If I can fool these so-called art critics, they'll finally recognize my genius, and maybe I can make some guilders along the way. So, he started forging paintings. First, he learned about all the different types of pigments the old Dutch masters like Johannes Vermeer had used. He had to find enough old paintings from the 17th century so he could scratch off the original paint and do his own stuff over the top. He had to develop a technique to artificially age his paintings, which he did by mixing in some bakelite, an early form of plastic, into his paints. He'd toss those paintings into an oven for a while and then put on a few finishing touches to create cracks that looked just like a 300-year-old painting. And they looked pretty good. In 1936, he created a painting using these techniques called The Supper at Emmaus. Now all he needed was a sucker. And he had just the sucker in mind. He was vain, driven by a lust for prestige. He was perfect because he wanted it to be true.
This looks like a fake, doesn't it? Well, it is a fake. But here's a fella who's willing to bet his hard-earned money on it.
He was the world-famous art historian Dr. Abraham Bredius. He quickly confirmed the painting was a real Vermeer, and it sold for $5 million. He sold millions of dollars worth of fakes. People were desperate to be part of history and to keep these valuable paintings out of the hands of the Nazis. But the biggest score was still to come. At one point, he moved back to Amsterdam, which was under Nazi occupation at the time. And that's when a guy named Herman Goering took note of this man who seemed to have a knack for finding lost works by the old Dutch masters. Goering traded 137 paintings he had stolen, worth a staggering $14 million, for a painting called Christ and the Woman Taken in Adultery, a fake Vermeer. Adolf Hitler committed suicide. The war ended, and the painting was liberated from its hiding place, a salt mine in Austria, which is where you would keep it, and Herman Goering swallowed a cyanide capsule the day before his scheduled execution. After the war was over, an Allied art commission tried to find all the original owners of the stolen Nazi art, but they were puzzled by this one painting, this previously unknown work by Johannes Vermeer. They learned the painting had been sold by Han van Meegeren. He was quickly arrested and put on trial for selling Dutch cultural property to the Nazis. But the problem is, it was a forgery. He said it was all a trick to make the Nazis look like a bunch of chumps. And maybe that's true. But there is also a lot of evidence that he was a Nazi apologist. He'd even sent an autographed copy of his own art book to Hitler during the war. Han van Meegeren was sentenced to a year in prison for forgery. But because the one thing Han van Meegeren loved more than forging artwork was doing heroin and drinking heavily, he died of a heart attack just after his trial had ended. His son Jacques van Meegeren took over his estate and started selling all of his paintings, which proved to be pretty popular. When he ran out of his dad's work, he did what any industrious Van Meegeren would do. He faked some of his own father's work.
I was duped!
Han van Meegeren is still a bit of a Dutch folk hero today. His work, both his originals and his forgeries, still hang in some pretty important museums all around the world. People don't really remember him as a Nazi sympathizer, they remember how he put one over on the Nazis. So maybe Han van Meegeren did get the last laugh after all, but more importantly, a shitload of guilders.